I'm Tim McVeigh, Vice President and General Manager of WSB-TV. This is a great time of year to take your family out and enjoy Georgia's hidden treasures. Some of the places we've visited over the years were suggested by many of you. Tonight, as part of our community coverage, we'll look at one of Georgia's most precious resources, the Chattahoochee River. We invite you to sit back and enjoy with your family.
A river that flows through our history, the Chattahoochee.
One thing that is unchanging is the river. It remains the same.
Explore with us how it shaped the past, fun-filled traditions, and the struggles to keep it pure.
This is a Georgia treasure and needs to be maintained.
Plus a special boat ride with Channel 2's Chief Meteorologist Glenn Burns. Now, Georgia's Hidden Treasures with Channel 2 anchors Jovita Moore and Justin Farmer.
We're in Atlanta. Yeah, this is Atlanta, but we are far from the traffic and the big office buildings and the hustle and bustle. No, this is the beautiful Chattahoochee River, the waterway, one of Georgia's most important waterways. It's a beautiful natural treasure, isn't it? It's the source of our drinking water. It provides recreational opportunities and contains major dams that offer electricity and flood control. This Chattahoochee River flows more than 400 miles, including right through Columbus, Georgia. And Jovita Moore is there at the city's famous river development, the River Walk.
Justin, while the Chattahoochee River begins in North Georgia, it is here along the lower section of the river where historians have uncovered fascinating clues about its past. Deep in North Georgia's Blue Ridge Mountains is where the Chattahoochee River begins. A hike along the Appalachian Trail will take you to a spring, not a river. It is clean, pure, and gentle, giving little hint of the power it unleashes downstream. And history indicates this river has flowed through Georgia for thousands of years. Artifacts discovered along the Chattahoochee River region are on display at the Columbus Museum.
The river really becomes vital during an archaeological period that's known as the Woodland period. And this is a time in Georgia when you have a lot of slightly more settled, developed communities arising, and they are able to become trade centers because of rivers like the Chattahoochee. So in this case here, we have some artifacts that are really prime examples of these kinds of trade materials. You have ear spools, which are decorative items that are made from copper. Copper is not a Georgia material, so that would have been coming from Tennessee or Michigan.
Talk about the influence of the Native American creeks on the Chattahoochee River.
The name Chattahoochee, there's a lot of speculation on where that name came from. One of our best guesses is that it comes from an early Muskogee or Creek word for painted rocks. The Chattahoochee is a really valuable source. It really becomes a lifeblood for them in their food and their transportation and everything that they're doing.
Over time, as the population along the Chattahoochee River Valley changed, different cultures discovered other ways to harness the rushing water. At some point, the inhabitants also realized that they could use the river for power and a form of electricity.
This artifact here is a great one to talk about this exactly. This is a millstone that was used to grind grain at City Mill, which was Columbus's oldest industrial establishment. And these maps, this is one of a couple different examples, but they were actually printed in New York in the 1840s. And the whole idea was for them to be distributed among the northeastern business owners and merchants who might be interested in locating a mill down in Columbus and investing here.
And the development of steamboats pushed river transportation and trade into a new era.
We're standing in front of a model of one of those boats that's 1/48th scale, just to give you a sense. It would have been in real life 135 feet long, and it was called the Lowell. And its name is significant because it's a direct homage to Lowell, Massachusetts, which even in the early 19th century was well known as a textile manufacturing center.
You would not think, because of the rocks and the rapid and the way the river seems to flow so often through Georgia, that a steamboat would be able to navigate.
It's a very delicate balance. You have to remember that the Chattahoochee meets up with the Flint towards the bottom of the state. In Florida, it's called the Apalachicola, and it flows out into Apalachicola Bay in the Gulf of Mexico. And Apalachicola was a very well-known port in the 19th century.
And what sort of items, what sort of merchandise were brought in on steamboats to come into Columbus from the Chattahoochee River?
In many cases, you're bringing in groceries or luxury goods, just as much as you think about Boston and New York being ports on the Atlantic Ocean that are receiving luxury goods from England or from France. Apalachicola is a way to get those goods from those northern port cities around to us. For nearly 120 years, there were 200 boats that traversed this river for commerce or for pleasure.
In Metro Atlanta, people have a long history of shooting the hooch, relaxing, fishing, and partying on the Chattahoochee River. These pictures are from the 1960s. And if you lived in Atlanta during the 1970s, you could not forget this. The Chattahoochee Ramblin' Raft Race. It was the unofficial kickoff to summer. Some called it the Wet Woodstock. And at its peak, hundreds of thousands of people packed the hooch to watch or join in the wild fun. This is what years of out-of-control partying, though, left behind. Trash and debris littered areas along the river. In 1978, President Jimmy Carter signed a law giving control of this section of the river to the National Park Service.
It's a rare occasion when, within the city limits of one of our major cities, one can find pure water and trout and free canoeing and rapids and the seclusion of the earth the way God made it.
They eventually stopped that raft race. Here's what the National Park Service said back then about the river.
We feel in the National Park Service that this is a great chance for us here to provide the protection that's needed.
There were other critical environmental problems threatening the future of the Chattahoochee. For years, tons of nasty raw sewage and toxic chemicals were leaked and dumped into our river. The environmental watchdog group, the Chattahoochee River Keepers, alerted the public to some of the dangers. In 1995, they sued the city of Atlanta to force action.
Was the city just looking the other way?
Well, it was a problem that they had grown for decades and didn't invest in their sewer infrastructure. So it got to the point where it's cheaper for them to pay the fines than it was for them to fix the problem. And the problem was their sewer system was very outdated. So in the mid-90s, Chattahoochee Riverkeeper filed a lawsuit against the city of Atlanta, which through the process resulted in a settlement to where the city has invested nearly $2 billion in their sewer infrastructure.
Is all the raw sewage now kept out of this river?
So what happened was the city was having between 60 and 80 overflows of sewage into the river every year. And through this upgrade in their sewer system, they are allowed up to 4 sewer overflows each year. And they've only had 5 since 2009. And today, this river downstream of Atlanta is cleaner than it has been in decades.
However, the legal battles involving the river are far from over. The river keepers are closely watching the decades-long water wars. The fight is over how Georgia, Florida, and Alabama share the river water.
It's going to the Supreme Court. What are your thoughts on this? Where do you see this going?
The bottom line is that we have to find a way for all river users throughout the system to agree on a water sharing plan, because there is enough water to go around, but everybody has to feel the pain. They have to conserve, use what they need, but they have to share it as well.
Water conservation and watershed protection have built the foundation of the Chattahoochee Riverkeeper organization. And frequently, you might even see these kind of cleanup efforts along the river. Hundreds of volunteers, including employees of Channel 2's parent company, Cox Enterprises, going out several times during the year to remove trash and other debris from the river and its tributaries.
What do you think is on the bottom of this?
The group also has various education programs.
Jason, I'm a big fan of your floating classroom program. Tell me about the kids and what they see when they're out there, what their experiences are like.
So our floating classroom on Lake Lanier, we've taken over 45,000 kids out on the lake since we started. And it's just a great way for kids to get out. They get to test the water, they get to see where their drinking water comes from. And for a lot of these kids, it's their first time ever even being on a boat.
Do you think that our city grasps the importance of this resource, the Chattahoochee River?
People are making that connection of turning on their faucets and driving over the river the next day. And we really have to understand that we have to have a plentiful, clean river if we're going to have water coming out of our taps. So I think we've come a long ways, but we do have a long ways to go. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a drought for people to really understand the importance of having a plentiful, clean river.
There's so much more to explore on the Chattahoochee River. Channel 2's chief meteorologist Glenn Burns shares his concerns about the river with Justin Farmer. This man did something on the river few people have ever done. And Jovita Moore shows where you can go whitewater rafting on the Hooch just like the pros. Plus, the economic boost the river is bringing to one Georgia city. Georgia's Hidden Treasures is a family-to-family special brought to you by Scana Energy, Kroger, Southwest Airlines, Northside Hospital, and American Signature Furniture. Georgia's Hidden Treasures now continues with Justin Farmer and Jovita Moore on the Chattahoochee River.
Downstream from Atlanta, this is the lower Chattahoochee River in Columbus, Georgia, and this development is known as the River Walk. It's a great example of how saving the river can also result in economic success. And many believe this kind of collaboration between commercial developers and environmentalists is important for protecting and preserving the river for future generations. The Chattahoochee River roars through downtown Columbus. Whitewater rafters seriously shoot the hooch. Whoa, somebody just fell in. Others zip line across the river. And those who just want to watch the wild water adventures can simply stroll around the 22-mile outdoor development known as Riverwalk. If you had to think back on what the Chattahoochee used to look like, maybe 20, 30 years ago, how would you talk about this area back then compared to now?
Prior to the Riverwalk being established, it was a dumping ground. Where we're sitting now was covered in kudzu. Industry was using it as a place to leave components, and it was garbage. The malls became in vogue. And so there was a lot of flight from the downtown area. A lot of boarded up businesses became the norm. And the river was not attractive, it was not safe, it was a place that people did not come to.
What do you think changed the mindset from ignoring it to doing something?
Well, the story is that there were 3 business leaders that met on Broadway in downtown. And on the hood of a car, they struck a deal and said that we need to do something about downtown. We need to bring the citizens back to the original city. Columbus is here and was founded here because of the river. It was industry, it was the furthest, most navigable part of the Chattahoochee River. Dry goods would be shipped to and from here. Industry was built around here. And so it was almost a recreation of what the city was originally back in the early 1800s.
There it goes!
Two dams more than 100 years old were imploded as part of the massive restoration. Sections of the Chattahoochee River were redesigned so that the whitewater rapids have a more natural flow. Endangered fish and plants eventually returned to the river. The Riverwalk project officially opened in 1992.
We've seen our visitation grow every year. We're now at 1.7 million people visit Columbus on an annual basis. This shows what an investment or reinvestment in the waterway can do as far as revitalizing any area and making a place that is healthy and safe and a great place to live, work, and play.
This land in Smyrna will soon be the newest development to showcase the natural beauty of the Chattahoochee River.
Jamestown over the years has assembled 88 acres of land and has rezoned it for a mix of uses, which would include a few hundred single-family homes, multi-family homes, and a mix of commercial spaces, which could be restaurants and retail of all different sorts.
And now it seems that smart developers understand that the environment is an amenity and that you would not want to at all endanger the very thing that makes this piece of property so valuable.
That's what we try to do as a company, is to not only just sort of check all the right boxes, but actually show off and celebrate how we're able to work within the context of the environment, create contextual communities that respond to what's here and not just try to force it to be something different.
The entire Riverview Landing development's expected to be completed in about 10 years. As Metro Atlanta's population continues to grow, there's concern about whether the Chattahoochee can remain our primary water supply. Channel 2's chief meteorologist Glenn Burns shared his thoughts about the Chattahoochee as we rode along this beautiful river.
Are you optimistic about this river's health as Atlanta continues to be a boom town?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic about the health. I think there's a lot more conservation going on than there ever has been. But the one thing that concerns me is the changing weather patterns. We seem to be getting a lot more rain. And with the non-porous surfaces, the driveways, the roads, the streets, the runoff, that's going to be a major issue.
Of course, we all remember what happened here in 2006, 2007. The drought was severe.
Remember back then, we had a serious drought. We had 5 years of drought, and you could actually walk across this river at times and in places. That's how bad it was. And we were actually within weeks of running out of water here. This is our main water source for the Metro Atlanta area. So again, we had some critical, very low water values here. But again, everything is cyclical, so the water comes back up. Now we're in a cycle where we're getting above average rainfall, and that above average rainfall is a big challenge to the Corps of Engineers to try to maintain this level of water and this quality of water.
As a veteran meteorologist, Glenn, you know so much about climate. You've lived in Georgia for such a long time. When you sit out on the river on a beautiful day like today, we realize this is a real treasure for Atlanta and for Georgia.
It's been amazing. You know, leaving the station and 20 minutes coming down and being in this remote wilderness is just astounding. The fishing has just gotten better and better over the years. You have the upper Chattahoochee River keepers really keeping everything in check. Lots of volunteers. I have great guides out here that can show you where to go and fish. This is a Georgia treasure and needs to be maintained and needs to be taken care of and nurtured.
Next, this man traveled along the entire Chattahoochee River, why he took this unusual journey.
What do you see?
And a lesson for kids and everyone about protecting the river's wildlife. Georgia's Hidden Treasures continues with stories from the Chattahoochee River.
Joe Cook has always been fascinated by the Chattahoochee River.
I fell in love with the Chattahoochee from an early age and kind of always dreamed of paddling the river to find out where it went.
In 1995, Cook and his wife did what very few people have done. They rowed a canoe from the beginning of the Chattahoochee to the end.
It was kind of a dichotomy there that, this is kind of polluted, but there's so much there that is beautiful and that is worth protecting.
It took Cook 100 days to complete his river journey. His connection to the Chattahoochee remains deep.
When I'm out on a river, where I grew up, the place where I grew up, here in Metro Atlanta, a lot of the landscape has changed dramatically. I go back home and I don't recognize what used to be my home, what used to be my community. But one thing that is unchanging is the river. It remains the same. So I think that's what I feel when I'm on our river. I feel like I'm at home.
Oh, he's swimming! He's swimming!
Chattahoochee Park Ranger Jerry Hightower is also passionate about the river. He shows these young visitors some of the wildlife that depend on it.
Not uncommon for me to go out and see the track of mink and weasel and muskrat and beaver along the river in the soft mud.
For more than 3 decades, Hightower has helped others discover the park and the river.
If you come to the Chattahoochee River, it's very difficult to leave without having a smile in your heart. And so it's one of those places that for so many people just touches their heart, soul, and spirit. And for me, it's been a lifelong experience like that. So this river has given so much to me that I've always wanted to give back.
There are more recreational areas right along this beautiful Chattahoochee River, so we hope you and your family get out there this summer. Explore this ancient waterway.
That's right, Justin. There are hidden treasures throughout our state, and we'd love to hear about the places you've discovered. Just go to WSB-TV.com and send us your suggestions. Thanks for joining us.